Welcome to the J.D. Levy & Associates Calibration Point Podcast. Our podcasts are designed to bring a conversational exploration of key topics that we believe will provide value and insight to those serving in the nonprofit sector. We will highlight new developments in the field, latest research, and things we're learning from our own clients that we can share. If there are topics that you would like to see explored, please send them to us through our website at jdlevyassociates.com. Welcome to the Calibration Point Podcast. I'm Chuck Wills, here along with Sarah Downing. Hi, Sarah.
Hey, Chuck.
We are sitting in for Jamie this month as co-hosts, and our topic is virtual events. Sarah, I know that's an area that you've had some experience in, at least this year in the season of global pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
A little disconcerting for everybody. So I know I have talked to a lot of different organizations that have not only experienced this, but have found a way through to be effective. To really define the problem, every organization needs to connect with their advocates. Here we have this external force that's keeping us from doing that in the traditional way. And so we've all been moved out of our comfort zone into some kind of virtual environment. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you have experienced and some of the folks that you work with have experienced?
I have seen and heard from many of our clients who have ventured into virtual events and have done an excellent job. And I've been really encouraged by them. And I would just like to applaud them for their efforts, for their willingness to, like you said, step out of their comfort zone, but prioritize being in touch with their donors through a pandemic and not going silent. To be active and to lean in deeper to raise the funding that they need and they rely on to do their mission, carry out their vision.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we have seen clients do a variety of virtual events, some ranging in time from one day to a week to a whole month. We've seen others employ methods of crowdfunding to be a part of that virtual event. Through all those, the different varieties, I think they've found success in connecting with donors and raising money.
That's great. And, I want to jump back to something you said initially about the courage to be able to step out and do this and not be silent. And I think that's the number one thing that I would advise is, especially at the beginning of this, back in the March-April timeframe, I think a lot of organizations had sort of a self-confidence issue that they felt like at first their mission was not as critical as some of the food and shelter and health-related things that were really in the forefront of the news. So what I say to that is your mission is absolutely important to those you serve and those that advocate for you and the cause that you serve.
Right.
And that now is not the time to be quiet, as you said. Now is the time to really say, this is how we are important to society, and this is how we achieve our outcomes.
Right, exactly. And donors, the things that they value, really haven't changed. What they loved about you before the pandemic, they still love about that cause now. So,
right.
Yeah, let's keep them engaged.
So in-person events really can foster connection between people. So what have you seen work that maintains a connection between an organization and its traditional supporters?
Really good question. And this was something I was concerned about, is how well organizations are still giving that personal relational touch. And the organizations I spoke to about that did not feel like that suffered with their event. I think in leading up to the event and the follow-up, your invites and thank yous, there's a way to make that personal. Pick up the phone and invite someone, make sure they knew about it. Send them a personal email or a text, your tier 1 donors. Make sure they're informed and that they know. And make sure once the event is over that you're following up with that thank you and letting them know what a critical role they play in what you're doing. Interestingly, I found for some virtual events, having someone to do the chat function throughout the event. So if there were questions, there was someone there live in real time to respond. Others actually used a call-in center. So they would have people standing by ready to answer the phone if there were questions Or if a donor wanted to give over the phone versus on the website, that they could call in and make their donation. Having that presence or the ability to reach out to someone adds that personal touch that donors appreciate and that they value.
That's a great idea. And really kudos to them for thinking that way, because that wouldn't have been my first thought to have a call-in center or somebody on chat to do that. So when we think about organizations that have had to launch into the virtual space where their staff may not have the expertise to really do this, do you have any thoughts on either supporting that staff to ramp up their expertise quickly or engaging with a third party to come in and provide support?
For someone who's not very tech savvy, I think engaging with someone as third party to help with video and production is a good investment. Being able to pre-record the virtual event or aspects of it definitely have their advantages, just, of time, of being able to rehearse it, of testing equipment so we know that it works, and having a professional to back you on that has the skill sets needed to create like a very nice produced event. I would say, ask for the help. A lot of us don't have those skills, so I think it's worth the investment to bring in a professional and take that part of the event off of your plate so you can be more focused on the mission and the donor engagement and how that's shared, and not as focused on the tech part of it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And the folks that I talked to, some of them said that actually there are quite a few resources available. A lot of AV companies that traditionally do live events have pivoted to do online events. Another thing that kind of surprised me, I think I had a preconceived idea at the beginning of this that virtual events were all going to be live. And the ones that I've been involved with have mostly been live. But a couple of the clients that I've spoken with have done either a hybrid event or an event that really didn't have a live video component. And I said, okay, how in the world did you do this? And one of the examples that was actually very successful, they always had a live event centered around an auction. So they went ahead and engaged with a third party to do an online auction, did a very good job of that, and then packed in around that a lot of social media posting. Mm-hmm. And it was not only people from the organization, but they had worked with a lot of advocates ahead of time to do videos, podcasts, and pictures. And so during this online auction, they were just saturating Facebook and Twitter and Instagram with all of this other variety of content that was really speaking to all the outcomes that the organization would see as they were providing their mission. That eliminated the risk of live video, mm-hmm. and it also eliminated a lot of expense. They said that time-wise, it took about as much time creating the event and all of that, but mm-hmm. it was a lot less expensive. And they were able to reach a lot more people mm-hmm. than they would normally have in their live setting.
Right. I've heard very similar reports. The cost of a virtual event seems to be hands down across the board a lot less than doing a live event, especially when you're doing a meal and feeding hundreds of people. So the cost is definitely a benefit. Also, being able to record some components of that ahead of time, I think sets you up for success, to be able to rehearse, to keep to your time allotments, and make sure that you have quality sound and audio. Because nothing's worse than at an event, right? When a speaker gets up and you can't hear them.
Oh, exactly. Pre-recording as much as you can, exactly like you said. That's going to help ensure success. But I do want to give a quick story. I had an event that was a hybrid, some pre-recorded, some live, and we were going out on Facebook Live. We had hired a professional company to support us. Everything was going great until Facebook dropped our feed.
Oh, no.
We were all looking at each other. Even the professionals were looking at each other like, well, Facebook dropped us so hard, we had to start over. This is the equivalent of having an in-person event where the building catches on fire. And so I think the lesson is there's no way to prevent that, because you are using a third-party platform, whether you like it or not, whether you're on Zoom, or Facebook or YouTube. One of the clients I spoke with, they were doing a big Zoom event, and there was a regional Zoom outage. Nothing you could do about it. It's just the way it went. So a couple of the things that they recommended, if the platform goes down, you just have to do your best to restart and reconnect with your audience. But if you have a particular speaker or the event host, if their connection goes down, you're in trouble. So with Zoom in particular, always have a co-host. If you only have one host and that host loses their connection, your Zoom meeting is finished. So always have at least one co-host. If you do have somebody that is going to be speaking remotely, have a backup plan that if their connection goes down, you have somebody else that is going to jump in and take over so that it seems seamless.
Good tip. Hey, Chuck, you touched on something a second ago about geographic reach. I've heard from several that with their virtual events, they reach people in other states that normally couldn't come to an event. And the organizations putting on the event were just amazed at how far their reach was. So I think being able to reach more people is definitely a plus. But with geography too, doing a virtual event, it kind of forces you to be more creative. And I think you can actually take your attendees somewhere else. So you can shoot your video in a place that is meaningful to your organization, whether that's, your homeless shelter or your cafeteria, or if you serve homeless and you're, under the bridges where they are, you can take your donor there in that video. I think that creates such a great experience too, to draw the donor kind of deeper into where you operate.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I have had exactly the same feedback. In fact, one of the organizations said they have wanted to go virtual for a long time, but the audience didn't have tolerance for it. Now the audience doesn't really have tolerance to get together. So they're really taking advantage of this opportunity, not just geographically, but time-wise. If I'm busy on 7:00 on a Saturday, I'm going to miss your live event.
Right.
But the magic of video, I can watch later and still get the same kind of impact as an advocate for the organization.
Yeah, I do think that we have that flexibility of when we watch, but I think it's really important to be conscious of your participants, your donors' time. Probably, let's keep it short. I would say, 45 minutes is probably on the long side.
Yeah.
Keeping it very donor-centric message, but be aware of your donors' time investment to be a part of that, not take the opportunity to, take up their whole night.
Oh, exactly. And I've had the same experience. Zoom fatigue is a real thing. One of the folks I talked to said, if you can keep it at 20 minutes, you're going to have a much better of your audience sticking with you and getting the message. So don't feel like this needs to be long.
Yeah.
Sarah, with a lot of video, there's so much of it, it can start to feel kind of plastic and the same. How can an organization go about really making this their own?
The advice I would give to our organizations who are being bold and venturing out into this is still remain authentic to who you are and your values and your culture, and find a way that is uniquely you and be able to share that. So that personal connection is there, even though it's virtual, but you are finding those meaningful ways to engage with your donors just as you would if they were there with you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sarah. I think, we always have to try to be ourselves in this. And I don't think it has to be fancy. It just has to be, as you said, totally authentic. It has to be you.
Yeah, I think, if you too fancy, too polished, too plasticky, we lose some of that, realness of who we are and what we're about.
Well, and a great example of this, the organization that did the virtual auction that bookended that with a lot of social media posts, none of those were professional posts. Those were just teachers and counselors and donors that were speaking from the heart, maybe even just doing something silly on camera for the benefit of this audience.
I love that. I love to be able to engage people. Yeah, just how they are.
Well, when we look to the future, I think everybody'd love it if we could predict the future, and I don't know that I can. But
it's better than 2020.
yeah, better than 2020. I've got all my fingers crossed for that. But when we look ahead, I think that what we are experiencing now, at least for the near term, is the future.
Mm-hmm.
Even if there was a COVID vaccine tomorrow and we were given the all clear, I think that you have to look at the tolerance of your audience for doing something in person. I can't predict when that tolerance is going to come back. And so I think virtual events are going to be with us for quite some time. And even when in-person events do start to make a comeback, virtual has its place. So this is a skill set to be familiar with and start to get some skills built around it, because it's going to be important for a while.
Yeah, I agree. And being able to generate some quality video content. I mean, so much of what we do is online and in socials, and being able to share video. Having that created for an event that you can use outside the event on your socials and on your website and sharing, I think that's an added tool in your toolbox as a fundraiser.
Oh yeah, 100%. So it sounds like overall, this is something that an organization needs to put some real time and effort, some resources into, just thinking big picture, not just about a specific event, but to really make that quality connection with somebody online without being there to shake their hand in person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say, be encouraged to do it and give it a try. We are hearing from several different organizations, different ways of doing it, but they found success. And again, as when we opened, we talked about that success is because they're continuing to engage their donors, and they're giving their donors an opportunity to make a difference and do something that they care about. And that's the heart of fundraising. So whether we do that in a virtual event or over a phone call or face-to-face, we're still doing the donor the service, and really, being at the heart of what this is all about, engaging others in a way that in something they care about.
Yeah, boy, that's an excellent point. Sarah, this has been great hanging out with you on the podcast today. Thanks for spending the time and talking about virtual events.
Thank you, Chuck. It was fun. It was great to be here with you virtually.
Thanks for listening to the J.D. Levy & Associates Calibration Point Podcast. If you have comments or ideas for future episodes, please reach out using the contact page on our website, jdlevyassociates.com.